listening to the Medic Materials Podcast, hosted by Mike Turek, Emily Yates, Kelsey Coons, and Gerard Cuomo. All are current EMS providers and educators with a combined 30 years experience. Each month, we discuss EMS news, medical science, and review actual EMS calls, bringing many educational opportunities to the listener. Portions of the calls have been altered to protect the privacy and identity of all involved.
Hello and welcome everyone back to the Medic Materials Podcast. Gerard and Kelsey, you're on Skype today, so that makes me all by my lonesome because I am still mad at Kelly for what she did on the beginning of the month. So how are you guys?
Doing good. Enjoying the nice weather.
Yeah, right?
Yeah,
Since
not too bad.
it is not too bad out. It was freezing cold this morning at my house. I don't know if that was just because I'm on the ridge or what, but it was freezing cold.
Yeah, I thought it was chilly, but not that bad.
I was not okay with that. But yeah, so we're gonna be talking about an article that was floating around on Facebook and Instagram and stuff, and there were a lot of comments on it, and I just felt like it was a interesting topic to be discussing, especially with us, because you know the way we run EMT classes and you know the way that Gerard, you set up scenarios and stuff like that. I'm intrigued to see how you guys you know think and your opinions on how to go about fixing what this article talks about. So Kelsey, let's dive into your rig check and then we'll get started.
So guys, I feel like it's been a little bit since I've done one of these, but we have new things coming for Medic Materials. So if you have recently tried to log on to our website, you'll have noticed that the website is currently down. We're going to be revamping that website to provide you with our newest updates on what Medic Materials is going to be doing to advance education in the future. We're also redoing our merchandise, and we're going to have a brand new store with all new merchandise to purchase, so make sure you keep an eye out for that. And just a reminder to sign up for Patreon, so that way you'll have access to the best topics and call reviews and a third podcast every month. And then we are going to shout out our peoples in Trinidad and Colorado today. So thank you guys for listening. We really appreciate your support.
Ooh, yeah. I still think it's funny that you said peoples.
I made sure to do that on purpose.
So if you guys, I don't know if you guys have seen this article. I think I sent it to both of you, whether or not you read it or not, who the heck knows. But it was off of overrunproductions.com, and it was titled Toxic Heroism and EMS, The Perfect Storm. So I honestly, I have the article here in front of me. I'm gonna read some of it, but I don't exactly know. There's one name on it, Daniel Schweitzer. I don't know if that's actually who wrote it or not. There's no like author by, but the whole concept of it was more or less talking about how we are taking, when we first introduce EMS to the populace, and they go, oh, hey, that would be a really interesting career to get into. We are introducing it in the wrong form and fashion. We're still introducing it like, you know, we are heroes of every day, that we're, you know, saving lives and that we're ripping people from the grips of death and this, that, the other thing. When this article says we should be really focusing on not burning these people out with false expectations, but training them for repeat offenders, boring long distance transports, you know, all of the mundane things that we do that takes up 97% of our call volume. So I think that's where I want to touch base on how you guys feel about that kind of stuff. Like I said, I'm going to read a couple parts of it. But then I also want to talk about how we change lab scenarios to fit creating a better provider post-school. And I think we all can relate to, you know, good and bad lab experiences. So this author starts off by saying, you know, observing EMS from a distance, A seemingly random set of events come together to create a storm that no one has ever seen before and no way to counter it. They go on and they say, we're at a critical point in the profession of EMS, and where we go from here largely depends on how we as clinicians define our role and how we do that role. And they say the most important, part, again, many running parts, but one of the most important part is going to be how we define this job and who we bring into the profession to carry it forward and be the leaders of the next generation. And that's something that, Gerard, I think you and I touched base on in just a conversation that we had one day, in that we look at the people that taught us,
Right.
and you quickly realize, like, we are their replacement in this business.
Yeah.
And now it goes even further, like from the time that you and I had this discussion, we were feeling like, oh man, we are going to be the old guys in EMS soon. But now Kelsey is our replacement in EMS. And that's even crazier to think about.
It's the circle of life.
It is. And it's makes me feel really old. They go on to say, here's what I see as one of the biggest problems. We're selling a bill of goods to people that aren't interested in what the job entails, and that's hurting the profession. What am I talking about? Think back to when you first joined your cadet program, signed up for EMT or paramedic school, or took your first position in EMS. Think about the signs you see in the advertising for the available jobs. What do you notice? Most of the time, you will hear talk about saving lives, rescuing, being a hero, or something of that nature. People looking to join EMS organizations get inundated with this messaging. On TV, shows with EMS are frequently portrayed as doing over-the-top resuscitations on patients, frequently in areas where buildings have collapsed around them, in the back of speedboats, trapped under leaking tank trailers. He goes on to, you get it. So the recruit coming into EMS has this idea of what they do before they start doing it for real. This isn't much different than most other jobs. Honestly, otherwise, how would people choose their profession? In school, they train relentlessly for life-threatening, potentially dangerous environments where lives are always in the balance. Everything from the assigned reading to simulator sessions focuses on the most critical, high-stakes situations. And then graduation, licensure, and now finally our newbie EMT or paramedic is going out to do what, they were trained to do, and reality sets in. Non-emergent transports to the ED, the frequent flyers who just may need more social service than, ambulance transport, or an on-scene rescue. The calls originally coded as emergent that turn out to only be urgent at best start to eat at the newbie. And they go, this isn't what I signed up for. So I'm going to pause there and kind of, I want to unpack it with you guys. First with, how do you, I think we all can say we agree with this. It's a bad marketing campaign for EMS. But how do we go about what should be the message then? Because I agree, you have to draw people in. And the excitement factor is cool to draw people in. But how do you make it, like, what would your marketing campaign be for this kind of thing?
I mean, it sounds, kind of shitty, I'm sure, to most people that do this, but honestly, I would change the whole theme of it from, the whole race the Reaper, save lives, all that crap, and just be honest about it and say, look, you're going to be basically a healthcare provider outside of a hospital.
Yeah.
It may be emergent, it may not be emergent. More than likely, it's not going to be. But yeah, you're more towards this is going to be a healthcare provider type profession, not a first responder, holding the line kind of thing. You know what I mean? It's granted, yeah, there's times where that does have to happen, but for the most part, it's the exception of the rule.
Right.
And I think doing that, you would actually eliminate a lot of the, for lack of a better term, fucking idiots that we get that, within 2 weeks, their shoelaces are undone. They're fucking, they got the freaking, the swagger going and running their mouths about war stories from, 4 days ago.
Right.
And,
all the whackers would be gone.
Right. Exactly. Walking around with the pagers and all that shit. For when that possibility that the sky might fall.
Right.
So.
Right. And I agree.
Yeah, I mean,
like, I think you're on the right track in, looking at us as first responders, I think is, it's that nasty umbrella term for cops, firemen, and EMS. And it's like, okay, well, great. Cops are called cops. Firemen are called firemen. EMS is called first responders. Why? We should be, like you said, a nurse is a in-hospital medical clinician. Why can't we be a pre-hospital clinician? Right? Because that's what we are, right? We are providing
hospital care provider.
Right. Go ahead.
I feel like I have a different perspective on this because, like, obviously I was a junior EMT for, a while, and my entire first year, I'm pretty sure I only did transports and, like, the basic hand-holding calls. Like, it took me, like, a literal year to get a call where I was like, oh, this person's, like, kind of sick. Not even, like, really sick. So I feel like even going into it, I was like, I mean, you get that, like, notion in your head, like, oh, like, it's going to be the whole saving lives thing. But my entire first year was, the mundane, boring stuff, which, 80% of our job is hand-holding. So I feel like for me, it was easier almost to transition into realizing that is a majority of what my job is. But I feel like on the same side, I mean, think about, like, cops. All cops do on TV is shoot bad guys. What do they do most of the time? Pull people over, write tickets.
Right.
Go to
and I think it's a generalized, like, connotation all across for first responders in general, if you want to group us in with them.
Well, and true. I mean, you look at any type of profession that does, what we do as that first responder community, right? How many fires do firemen go to? Not very many.
Yeah.
Right? But, we're running into the flames. No, you're not. You're going to a fire alarm activation to go there, find out it's, burnt toast, reset the alarm, and go back and start jerking off. That's what you're going to do, and that's the same thing with us. But we have this, we've taken the pedestal almost, and we've raised it so high that now we're all held at, like, Olympus hero level, when really we shouldn't be, Yeah,
I mean, you got, let's face it, the media and the freaking entertainment doesn't really help.
It doesn't help.
You get those stupid shows like 911, and they're all, like, top rated and all this shit, and you're like, great, so that means all the fucking morons out there that know nothing about what we do, this is the only exposure to the inside track that they get,
right?
And they think this is how it is,
and they expect that kind of level care when you get there, and it's like, and then they're angry when you're like, this is not how this works, like,
right? Like when I meander outside to the overdose, it's sitting there, and I'm just like, okay, well, here's what we're gonna do,
right?
And they're like, well, why aren't you moving with any kind of expediency? I'm like, well,
because
do you want the sarcastic my answer, or do you want the real answer? Because the sarcastic my answer is, I don't really give a shit. But
but at the
I'll see four more of them. I'll see four more just like them today. So just chill.
Right. But but it does.
But the reality is, we're not gonna run into the freaking burning building or any of that shit. It's not what we do.
And you know what? It's funny because everyone always pulls the, we should be running everywhere because that's what they do on TV. Firemen don't run into burning buildings either. You know?
No.
Like, cops run after suspects. Other than that, I don't ever see them run anywhere. Like,
No,
you know, and that's only when they have to. So I am 100% in agreement that the narrative needs to change. And I think, you know, if we can somehow get the message out there, right? When I went to the conference, like 2 or 3 weeks ago, however long it was now, in my culture, lecture that I did, I brought up the fact that EMS needs to change its message from, and its thought process from being, you know, that hero responder medical provider to, we are just an offshoot of the customer service industry. I couldn't tell you how many looks that I got in that room.
Oh, yeah.
When I said we are no different than the barista at Starbucks that goes, here, sir, here's your coffee, you know.
Oh, you actually said that? That's awesome.
I did because there's like, I got one look from a dude in the back that was like, grr, and I was like, it's true. I
don't know if I necessarily believe that though.
You know, am I lying?
Like, if you think about it, like, you know, you go to Starbucks and, I mean, we have those people that call us and, you know, in our mind, they don't really need us. But in their mind, they needed us enough to call 911. And to a certain extent, at some point or another, there are those people that abuse the system and start calling you just because they can. And then, yeah, at that point, to that one person, you are just a Starbucks barista. But to the general majority, we are people that they call when they need something, however relevant that is to us, if we think that they warrant an ambulance or not. That all comes down to, you know, the U.S. healthcare system as a whole is knowing when to go to an urgent care, when you need 911, when to see your primary care doctor versus the ER. And that's not the fault of the people. I mean, there are those people that, you know, they call every single Friday because they like their favorite crew that's on. But the general majority, I feel like, call us because in their mind, their problem is important enough. And even the person that's having an issue that they've had for 3 days, but they have no way to get to the hospital, we are their way to get to the hospital, and we're not just some, you know, throwaway. Like, to them, we are the most important people to help them at that time.
So,
yeah,
hold on. Time
one
out.
of the things I like to do with it. Okay.
Shut up. Just time for 1 second, then I'm going to come back to you. Because I think, Kelsey, you misunderstood where my barista comment was going. I'm not demeaning us as what we do and how people perceive us. What I was trying to get at, and again, I elaborated way more in the lecture, is that we are like the barista in that there is an exchange of goods and services for payment, right? So somebody calls us and they have chest pain, right? So we come, we provide a service, we fix their chest pain, give them an assessment, take them to the hospital, you know, whatever. And then they pay us for that service. So it's the same as if you went to Dunkin', ordered a large light and sweet, they make your large light and sweet, you give them money. It's a transaction, right? And it's no different than if we said, hey, we have plumbing that needs to get done. Let's call the plumber. The plumber is going to come in. He's going to say, okay, it's going to be this much for this much work. Cool, bang, boom, do the work. Here's that much money, right?
We do kind of have the same ass cracks.
Yeah, right. All customer service, all customer service based, right? And when you look at EMS as a customer service industry, you have to move the culture forward, because if you maintain the disgruntled, bitchy culture that we have now, would you, if you had the opportunity and the luxury of living in a district where you have chest pain, you call, you get a crew, they're disgruntled fucks that don't give a rat's behind about you and treat you like dog shit, non-human, whatever, just like so many providers do out there, make the whole, experience miserable. If you had the opportunity and you needed to call again, would you end up calling the same place, or would you look for something different? right? If you have an experience, a negative experience at a restaurant, what do? You tell everybody around you don't go to that restaurant, and then you find somewhere that's going to give you a better experience. We don't.
I mean, I would change your variable a little bit. I would actually change it to you called for, the toe pain that scared you into calling 911, and the crew treated you like a fucking idiot.
Sure.
Even when you have the chest pain, are you going to call?
It works both ways. It works in any scenario. But we're not we don't have people don't have the luxury of going, I don't want ABC ambulance, so I'm going to call XYZ ambulance. They don't have that luxury unless they drive down the road. So that's where I'm thinking we need to look at ourselves as customer service, because if we're acting like that, then we're not treating people like dog shit anymore.
And I feel like it's less of a customer service than a public service, because you serve if you're a public service, you serve all of the public, well, no matter what their complaints are, no matter how you feel about them. It's just a baseline for anybody in healthcare.
Yeah, but
but we're not a public service.
Right.
We're a business.
We're a business. Exactly.
We charge people money for what we do. We're not getting their money out of their taxes. They're not paying our salaries. We don't have a union. We don't have any of that stuff like other public services do. We are a business. Plain and simple.
And that's why I use that whole customer service type of thing to get people thinking oh man, this is just an exchange of goods, right? And it's a transaction. And if I have a bad transaction somewhere, I'm going to have a negative experience and I'm not going to want to go back. That's why, that's why when you call, so Gerard and I do a call, right? And we go to Betty's house, and Gerard and I are total dicks, and Betty hates us, right? The next time Betty calls, do you think that she's going to be the nice sweetheart, or is she going to be automatically defensive because she thinks that everyone at that agency is just as terrible as Mike and Gerard was the last time they treated her? That's why you get those negative, repetitive reactions with patients, because they're just on defensive, because they had a bad experience with one person,
But we do that to ourselves when we show up and we're all grumpy and miserable.
Exactly, because we don't look at our industry as what it is. We look at it as, ugh, Betty fucking called again. How dare she interrupt my poop? That's how we look at it. And then we're disgruntled that she called.
But that's not something, it sucks, but not everybody is like that. Eventually, yeah, it gets tiring to show up, but at that time she needs you, and I get it. It sucks, but there's nothing you can do about that. So if you're that miserable, just leave.
Well, I think that's the point is, having a different mindset coming into this versus the whole, we're going to pump you up and make you think you're going to, do all this stuff. And at the end of the day, all you need to do is go to Betty's house with a smile on your face and take her to the hospital or wherever.
Right.
That's a big difference than, hey man, you're going to be freaking, running around, saving lives with one hand, driving with the other at, top speed. And, and it's it's a completely different thing. So when your mindset, if you're a person that has that mindset of coming into this where, I'm going to be a, effing hero and we're going to do all this crap. And then all of a sudden you find out it's not, well then, yeah, then
you're burnt and you're disgruntled,
We're actually thinking of talking about this today.
What's the difference between that and going and getting some job at some big fancy corporation that you realize isn't all that it's cut out to be? You either stay in the job and you're miserable, or you leave.
Right. Well, no, there's no difference. It's just the problem here is people just don't leave.
Right. Because right. And
poor performance. So again, which also illustrates the fact that, this is a business. Let's be honest. There's a lot of people with piss poor performance that are never held to account for what they do.
Yeah.
Because we need to have asses in seats.
Right. And think about it, right? You go to a construction, a contractor, right? with 12 employees. It doesn't even have to be a large contractor, right? If one guy is fucking up and making mistakes and they train him, they retrain him, still fucking up, bad attitude, shows to work up late, whatever, what are they going to do? They're going to can his ass because they need to replace them with somebody that can actually be good, be a good employee. What do? We go, well, we need to fill a truck. Whereas the contractor goes, you know what? We'll suffer for a little while until we can pull somebody else in, right? You guys are going to have to work a little bit harder. Maybe the job will take a little longer, whatever. We'll work around it. And we go, well, we'll keep that shitty provider and that bad attitude, that bad work environment. We'll keep that just so we can put a truck on the road. We don't take the sacrifice of, oh, well, maybe the boss is going to have to pull a shift in a truck, you know, for a couple days until they find somebody that they want to work with at that agency. You know, it's a revolving circle of suck, you know.
Yeah.
That's really what it comes down to. So moving.
I was just gonna say, I mean, it's funny we're actually talking about this because for whatever reason the other day I was just sitting around with, you know, not a lot to do except think. And
that must have been
like
scary.
one of the things it was a horrible day. So if I'm thinking, it's a bad day, you know. But one of the things I was thinking about was, you know, along with the whole, you know, finding out this isn't what it, you know, was, you know, sold to you as, and all that stuff, which, you know, of course is going to, you know, take the wind out of your sails and, you know, get you all grumpy and shit. I mean, one of the things we also do is we put this, like, such an emphasis on, you know, these very rare occurrence forms of success, like the code save, you know, the just the things that we don't really get a lot of. And, you know, I was just thinking about, like, myself, you know, I've been doing this all these years. Shit, I don't have a code save. You know, I have Rosk a couple times, and, you know, it didn't work out. But,
right.
You know, I've never had a patient that was, you know, in full cardiac arrest, go into the hospital, and then come out later. And it was just thinking about, like, you know, we put such emphasis on, you know, what type of provider you are based on, you know, stuff like that. And we lose sight of, you know, all the little things that we do that are so damn successful that, you know, actually did make a difference. And, you know, how many diff breathers did you take to a hospital that, you know, I mean, shit might take 10 a week. How many of them would have died if we didn't do that?
Right.
You know, and it's like, we don't measure ourselves on stuff like that. We're always looking for these big ticket items, you know, the massive MVA, you know, all that shit. And it's like, and yeah, and I can see where you know, that there's a level of apathy that can set in after a while with people, along with all the, you know, the not, you know, being, you know, the you know, the business that was sold to, you know, to them as, and that kind of stuff. And it just forms this, like, perfect storm of turning someone into a complete douche, you know?
Yeah, I can't agree more. You know, it's funny how there's always a different metric of measuring success depending on what business you're at. You know, it could be as to the administrator, how many calls did we do this year versus how much revenue did we make, right? And that measures success. Or, you know, to a businessman, how, you know, okay, we started a business, we had this, you know, potential, you know, percentage growth, we made this much revenue, we invested this much, we created 8 new products, cool. We did really well. Right. And then, yeah, like, those are measurable big ticket items that can be obtained. And then you look at the generic provider, right? And yeah, it is amazing that you said that, because I didn't really even think of that coming into this. But just hearing that, it really is, you are focused so much, and I couldn't tell you how many times, Kelsey, you're doing it right now. How many times have you run code and or mega code scenarios in paramedic school?
I feel like since we've done ACLS, you average like one adult or one pediatric a week.
Right.
Yeah.
So, cool. I might do 3 cardiac arrests a year where I'm at. Maybe. Right? No, other years it's been more. You know, I was on a tear there where I was doing 1 a week. Sometimes it just does happen. Right? And
yeah, recently I was literally had one where it was like, I did 3 in 1 week, and it was like,
yeah,
there was a stint where there was
stop.
like one every day for like 10 days, and I was like, what is going on? Like, what's in the water?
Right.
Yeah, for real.
And you get those type of events, but really it is more of a halo skill, right? And you know, we practice it and practice it and practice it, which is great. But how many times, like you said, when you actually look at it, you get ROSC, you feel great, cool, you deliver them. 3 days later, you find out they died, you know, in the ICU upstairs, you know, and it just is what it is. I've had ROSC plenty of times. I've never had somebody walk out of the hospital, just like you. Never. 15-year career, never once. You know, the success rate for someone actually walking out is under 3%. Under 3% in America. And that's for every single cardiac arrest in the United States is under 3%. So you're looking at a couple dozen, maybe 100 for the entire country. And this is our measuring stick. I'd rather, you know, that's that's unfathomable to me. I can't believe I got that word out.
But we do it, you know. It's literally exactly what we do.
I don't think it's...
I'm just using cardiac arrest as an example. I mean, there's many, you know, things like that where it's, you know, there's these big ticket items that, you know, rarely occur, but, you know, that's like how a lot of people, you know, measure themselves, you know.
And I know you want to say something, Kelsey. I'm like, I agree. I think it needs to be a new provider mindset. So like the people that listen to our show, right? Sit down and think about, you know, how many codes you did a year and what you measure your personal success on, and see if it's like, okay, you know what? I handheld that old lady's hand for 45 minutes while I transported to the ER. I didn't do a thing but talk to her. How many patients did I talk to and put my paperwork down and just have a conversation with them because they're human, and that's what I should be doing, not fucking paperwork, right? Measure your success with those types of things, you know?
Right.
Hey, because that's going to build you to be a better provider. Oh, hey, I had 5 diff breather this week, and 4 of them I delivered better off than when I found them. Their SAT increased.
Exactly.
Their labor went down. Their ventilations increased, whatever. You know what? That was good. I did good this week.
Yeah.
I agree. Take the small wins, because I would rather 500 small wins over 1 big win. That's just,
and you know, will you even have an opportunity for the 1 big win, you know?
Yeah.
I mean, that's,
Yep. Kelsey, I didn't mean to step on you. Go ahead.
You're good. I don't think it's like, dang it, now I forgot what I was gonna say. I feel like it's like, I agree with the fact that it's bad to, you know, take your wins based on how many cardiac arrest saves you have. But like, you know, in EMS charts, there's that little drop down where it's like initial patient acuity, and then it's like patient outcome. Did they unchanged, improve, get worse? And it's like every time that you're able to sit there and click that, you know what, they improved. Whether it's I sat there and I talked to the little old lady who really just needed somebody to talk to, and she really had no medical complaints, but she felt better emotionally. That's an improved. Or, you know, I gave pain management and they actually improved. Or I actually helped the diff breather. Every time that you click that little improve button, that's a little, you did your job correctly that day. And it's not saying that the days where the patient craps out on you, you did your job wrong, because sometimes the deck's just stacked against you. But if you actively tried your hardest and you have that ability to press a little improve button, I don't think it's like, that's a win. And I get that, you know, we do 3 codes a year where you get ROSC maybe. And like, that's a big deal for you to even be on 3 codes a year where you get ROSC. But I also don't necessarily disagree with running a code a week while you're in medic school, or, you're doing the same really bad asthma attack every single day when you're in EMT school, because those are the really, really bad patients that you're not going to want to forget how to do your skills on. Because,
Right.
You can sit there and take 10 minutes to do an IV on grandma who really just needs a little fluid.
Right. No, I don't think we're saying, don't train on this stuff, because when those low frequency occurrences, happen, you don't want to have to think about shit. You just want to be automatic. So that's where the training comes in. But it's funny. I like the point you made with the drop downs. So I will then ask you this question. At the end of a year, when the agency posts all their, this is how we measure ourselves as an agency. What do you see? Intubations, cardiac arrests, calls, answered calls, all that, mutual aid call, all that crap. Where do you ever see, how many times did we bring a patient in with improvements?
Yeah.
But
Never.
That's not something that's hard to change. I mean,
It's
all
not.
it is, I mean,
It
with
really
the way
isn't.
NEMSIS runs data nowadays, that's something
Right.
super easy to change. You
There's so-
literally
there's-
just need to run a
there's so
report
much
and be
data.
like, Gerard improved 98% of his patients.
Bingo. Right, exactly. Why aren't we doing that?
I don't think that's something anybody's ever thought about.
Well,
Why haven't we?
there's-
Because it's never been something we've done before, which
Because
doesn't
there's no-
necessarily make it a bad thing, but somebody's
Right.
got to bring it to the table.
Right. No. I was being more of like a rhetorical question. Right. The point is because of the whole, and we're going to do the whole, professional callback thing, because of the whole hero complex. Who cares about whether or not you had 90% improvements? How many massive MVAs did you do?
right. How many times can you sit there and be like,
You got a badass over here.
Right. Exactly.
Well, and I think it comes down to more percentage based than anything else, because say Turk does 3 intubations the whole year because, he was having a good year and nobody needed to be tubed on his watch, but he got 3 out of 3. That's 100% versus Joe Schmo over here who's done 20 because for some reason he's just got all the dead people and he's gotten 2.
Right.
You suck.
And I think if we looked at things more percentage based instead of, I had the chance to do X, Y, Z, like it doesn't come down to chances. It comes down to how you did when the opportunity presented itself.
yeah.
Right.
I think that is an amazing metric that, again, I don't think any administrator has, like, I've never seen that in 15 years.
Oh.
You always see, Turk was 100%, he was 85% with IV school, blah, 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 whatever. And you don't ever see like, hey, you dropped off, you did 150 calls this year, you dropped off 100 patients, 55 of them got better from the time you met them to the time you dropped them off to the hospital, and that's you don't even need percentages. You could sit there and be like, there's 100 charts that you did, 55 of them improved. Perfect.
Right.
That's cool. Right. But also from an education standpoint, yes, we have to sit there and go, there are patients out there that will not improve no matter what you do. And we get that. But at the same point, you could take that data and go, okay, Gerard did 100 patient contacts. He transported 100 people. 97 of them were either unchanged or, got worse in his care. I wonder why. Well, let me go back and look at if there's any common denominators in these calls. And, look, I found one. He's doing X, Y, Z. Cool.
Right.
Well, maybe we can take that and we can re-educate him so that now he's not making that same fucking mistake all the time. Right? But again, the metrics that we use are pointless. I mean, they have measurability, and yes, we do need to intubate successfully, but I think, like you guys both said, we weigh too heavily on those.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I know we have administrators that listen to this show. I know we have a lot of, people, just providers that listen to this show. And I think, like, I am always hopeful that the people that listen to the show go, hey, that is a really awesome idea. Let me bring that back somewhere. Don't just go, hey, that's really awesome, and then don't ever do anything with it. Like, take it somewhere. you know?
Yeah, and like she said, I mean, there's so much data that you can. I mean, especially now. I mean, I'm pretty sure that most places, I would say the overwhelming majority now use some form of EPCR. So yeah, the data that you can easily get with a click is immeasurable. I mean, there's just so much there. So yeah, why aren't you tabulating things like that? And you know, giving us actually, you know, something that actually will, you know, make you go, hey, yeah, look, I'm actually pretty good at my job, and yeah, this is all right.
Yeah.
You know.
Yep. And it takes that worry and burden off of your providers too. You know, sitting there going, oh man, you know, I've really been doing bad. Now they get in that lack of confidence, and that's when mistakes happen, is when providers are not confident, you know? Yeah. And there's that gray area right in the middle of being overconfident and not confident enough. And that's where you need to sit, because at either ends of that spectrum, you're going to fuck up. And, you know, if you have your administrator going, hey, you know what? I noticed that you've been down a little bit. Like, you know, what's going on? Oh man, you know, I think I've been doing really bad. Like, I've had really hard patients. They've been doing this, that, the other thing, like unsuccessful outcomes, whatever. That'll break people, you know, because they think it's them. And if an administrator comes in and goes, yo, listen, I know you're in a rough spot, but look, over the course of the last month, you've done XYZ way better than, you know, you've done poorly. That's gonna boost that provider's confidence, so they're not in that make a mistake zone, you know. So let me just read a little bit more. So we got into, you know, what kind of calls that we actually do, and they go on to say aided by more jaded senior colleagues who also originally got the job for the thrill and found, you know, banality, the job becomes bullshit. The calls are bullshit. And by extension, the patients are now bullshit. This helps grease the way to burnout, poor care, and high turnover as EMTs and medics look to escape the job for something better. I mean, we've all seen that. Right. We know EMS exists in a weird sort of netherworld between medicine, public health, and public safety, which, again, I disagree with that from our first conversation. The range of what EMS is expected to do out in the world and the future demands of the people we serve is astonishing in its scope. But there is a problem with this, one that they say we've overlooked. First, this job is very rarely about saving lives. Take a second from reading this and think back over your career. This is exactly what you did, Gerard. How many times can you say that the thing you did was the direct causation of the person walking out of the hospital? It's quite rare. In over 25 years of being an EMT and then a paramedic, I can confidently tell you less than 5 of those instances in my career. Less than 5 out of a lot of patient contacts. Am I a poor clinician? Don't think so. Unlucky? Maybe. Or is it that realistically, while our chances to pull someone from the grip of the Grim Reaper themselves is very rare, the opportunity to help, and this is the most important thing, the opportunity to help someone, to relieve suffering, to assist families with end of life and grieving is more of what we do. We don't sell it that way, but it's much more common. Giving patients a smooth, comfortable transport, addressing discomfort in a variety of ways, and reducing or taking away pain are things that we do every day, or should. Calming nervous patients or family and reassuring them that we do in fact care and that we will take good care of their loved one isn't something we look at as cool. However, you know, we look at it as we don't take time for the touchy-feely stuff. We're only there to save lives. Or as the shirt says, train to save your ass, not kiss it. And I don't even need to read the rest, you know, but they get into the fact of this. They turn around to say the toxic heroism is the idea of what we do is heroic and extraordinary all of the time. And, you know, when in reality, it's everything that we just laid out and more, you know, being at people's side, like there is yes, we provide the service of healing and attempting to heal and great assessments and transport, but how many times have we just needed to be the psychologist or, the ear to listen to,
Right.
or, the data point so that people can understand because you explain to them what's going on because the doctors refuse to,
Right. And that was and honestly, it's funny. I've done that more times than not where, I've explained something to someone and they're like, oh, wow, yeah, like my doctor never explained that to me, or
yeah,
they didn't quite understand what the issue was they were sent home from the hospital with. So they get freaked out and they called, which was going to bring me to what I was going to say earlier on was, there's times when you go and, people are freaking out because in their mind, they're calling because it's an emergency. And you get there, and how many times have you gotten there? And once you've explained things to them, suddenly it's like, oh, okay, I'll just call my doctor on Monday.
yeah,
Right. So it's not necessarily, turning into a transport. It's you going and, providing that, level of calm and, hey, yeah, maybe they didn't explain to you that, you had surgery on your foot and it's going to hurt.
yeah.
So
It's almost like it's almost reassurance.
I mean, we are. It's kind of hard over Skype.
Yeah, I know.
Go ahead, Kelsey.
Don't all talk at once now.
Yeah, sorry. It's a little hard over Skype because I can't tell you when you guys are about to open your mouth. I mean, I feel like we are really, especially in the age of, telehealth and, the fear of wanting to go to the doctors and the hospitals because everybody's overcrowded and overworked and nobody, you get 5 seconds with that doctor because he's got 30 other patients he's trying to get discharged. We really are, the face-to-face, the real, put a face to the person actively helping you. And, I mean, how many other professions do you actually get to sit there for 40 minutes and this is my only patient, my only job is to fix whatever that they need help fixing today.
Right.
And I think you want something new to paint EMS as, and it's not that we're the life-saving heroes, but we're the healthcare profession that actively gets to do one-on-one patient care and actively see within a 10-minute, hour and 10-minute transport time the difference that we can make for that one person.
Yeah. I mean, it almost goes to it almost really kind of begs that, one of the changes to be made, get the E out of EMS,
Damn Skippy.
call it FMS or something, field medical services or some shit.
Yeah.
Just something that indicates that, yeah, we're providing medical service outside of a building.
Right.
And we're not necessarily here for an emergency.
Right.
And I think if you start changing things I know that's probably never going to happen, but you know what I mean? If you start changing that mindset right off the get go, when people, sign up for their EMT class for the first time or whatever, hey, this is not what you're, all that 911 shit you saw on TV. Yeah. If that's what you're here for, there's the door.
Well,
I hear the police academy's looking for help.
Right. And, I think in the overall spectrum of EMS and, a lot of companies can do this, on their own without, the grand scheme of EMS changing all over. The culture, the branding, the marketing of EMS needs to change into, maybe changing the name from emergency to pre-hospital. I mean,
right.
I don't know if you want to say pre-hospital because then it turns into almost PMS, and that's just terrible. I'd rather stick with EMS, not PMS, but something.
That's why I went with FMS because I thought the same thing. I was like, a little too close.
Right.
Yeah, I'm not gonna do that.
But even going as far as changing the names of ambulance agencies from rescue squad. When was the last time we rescued anybody? We don't rescue people anymore. We're not dangling on high ropes and wires and, ripping people out of burning cars. And, we're not doing that anymore. It's not emergency. It's not 1975 anymore. That's up to fire departments. Let them be the fucking heroes. Whatever. I don't care. Let me provide my medical service. And that is every medical service, from somebody that just needs a good cry, and I'll listen to them and talk to them and get them a social service that they might need, to the mega code, 18 cardiac arrests in a bus accident after it flipped off of a bridge and rolled down an embankment. Cool.
That sounds like one of your classroom scenarios.
It's not that crazy.
You arrive on scene and you're the only one there. What do you do?
Yeah, right. But so to finish up, I actually did want to talk about classroom scenarios. So we have three very interesting.
Before you get into that, I'm
okay.
going to step on you real quick.
Okay.
Because I think the following point to that is, if we are able to change this and change the mindset, change the culture, change the way it's viewed, I think at that point and I know administrators are going to hate to hear this, but yeah, you're gonna wipe out, I would say, probably a good portion of the people that you have working in this business right now, because they're not going to be here. That's not what they're here for. They're here to go do heroic things,
right?
And they're the ones who end up pissy and moany and all that crap. But with the people you have left, your level of service is going to become better.
Yes.
And I think at that point, your higher levels of care might actually recognize the asset they have at their disposal now, and maybe use us for what we should be used for.
Yeah, because I mean,
the community paramedics and the video like Kelsey was saying, we can go to someone's house and spend 40 minutes with them.
Right.
A doctor can't spend 40 minutes with a patient. A nurse can't spend 40 minutes with a patient. We can.
Yep.
We're an asset. Use us. Let us do that stuff for you.
Right. But if you don't have the respect because you're a bunch of nincompoop whackers that keep making mistakes because we think that we're all that in a bag of donuts, when really we suck at most things. And, so if you actually if you change everything, increase the professionalism level, increase the provider level, like you said, weed out all of the people that don't belong here, then, or are not even don't belong, but are here for the wrong reasons.
Yeah. They'll once, if it changes, they're
out.
They're not going to come here to begin with. And the ones that are here that finally realize that this isn't what it's supposed to be, they'll like they do now, they'll just wither away.
Yeah, and you'll be left with the people that actually want to spend 40 minutes with grandma talking to a doc on telehealth, or, giving shots in the arm, or whatever it might be. Those are the people, the ones that actually want to provide pre-hospital healthcare. And I think it's a great idea.
And I think at that point, that would be a point where I think, again, to the administrators and whatnot, that they would have a pretty decent amount of ammunition in their pouch to go to the insurance company and say, here's what we're doing now. It's called bill for service. Yeah. You're not giving us a flat rate for transporting, because we're not transporting everybody.
Damn Skippy.
But we are going to provide medical care. So, we're going to charge $200 for that IV we're putting in. We're charging, $40 for the aspirin we just gave, just like the fucking hospitals do.
Yeah.
I feel like if you think about it, I mean, you don't want to call us pre-hospital care because PMS just sounds bad, which I'm totally on board with. But if you think about it, we really are an ER on wheels. But if you think about it, an ER has, the nurses, the techs, the doctors, but they also were the ones that have the hospitalists that, come in and they're supposed to explain their condition the best they can. And some days they do great and some days they don't do so great. And they also are the ones that have your social services, and they do the hand holding, and they can arrange for, maybe you need some help getting food care, and that's what social services is there for. And they have all those things, and it's just you and your partner, and you have to juggle all of these hats. And it's like, you are actively making a change, just not in the way that you think, because the way we portray it is totally different than the way we actually do it. But you're wearing the nurse, the tech, the doctor, the social services, the hospitalist. All of those are you when you show up to that 80-something-year-old who just got diagnosed with congestive heart failure and is freaking out because she doesn't understand what it means.
And
all they hear is heart and failure.
Right, and now they're dead, right? because in their eyes,
nobody ever
I'm gonna
explained to them
die.
that it's actually something that's controllable and it's not going to kill you right now.
Yeah, people live with it every day.
And it's you bring up a really good point, Kelsey, that we always say, oh yeah, we can do everything that the ER can do and blah blah blah, or ER on wheels. Realistically, fuck that. We're a hospital on wheels, right? Because now there are a lot of things that a hospital can do that we can't. Cool. We can't do pericardial centesis. Okay, I'll give the hospital that one. But when you break down what we carry, right? What is an ER and a respiratory therapist and a ICU going to do to their intubated patients? They're going to sedate them and they're going to control their pain and they're going to put them on a vent. Oh, look, we can do all three of those, right? We can intubate people. We can give them drugs. We can, do all of the things that these other places can do. And even in other parts of the country, there's even more things that, they will allow people to do because the doctors are like, yeah, give these guys stuff. There's IV antibiotics that are being started by, pre-hospital providers. There's sutures that are being done by pre-hospital providers. There's, New York is just kind of archaic in the fact that they just don't want to jump on board with these things. But there is so much other stuff being done across the country that would blow your mind here in New York. But the hospitalists and the doctors that are overseeing these programs are realizing like, hey, you know what? They can do a lot and they should be doing a lot. And I think maybe their messaging has been improved to the point where now they're respected enough that these doctors are like, yeah, let's give them these things. Where here in New York, it's kind of laughable that the doctors are like, no, don't give them anything, or, hey, we'll let you capitalize that letter, but the rest of it, we're not going to let you touch.
Well, I think a lot of it's almost as like you have two trend lines and we're almost at the point of convergence now. And I think, like I kind of touched on before about the billing for service, right now we only bill for what? Transporting, and maybe a service fee for if we do like an RMA or something like that. You might get something, you might not. But, I mean, what agency is going to want to, have a rig that's only set up for community paramedicine where you have the telehealth machine, you have extra drugs and pumps and things like that on, for complying with, if a doctor orders, a certain infusion over a certain amount of time and we can say there and do it without them going to the hospital, having us do that, who's going to pay for all that or who's going to want to do that if you're not going to get paid for it?
Right.
So I think we're kind of reaching that point where, we have these capabilities, but, at some point the payment dynamic has got to change because it's archaic.
Yes.
There are places elsewhere, like in the U.S. and like overseas, that community paramedicine is becoming like a major thing.
Go to Germany. It's not even becoming. It is.
Okay, well, I don't pay attention to Germany, if I'm being fully honest with you. I'm sorry to the people in Germany. I just have not ever looked into your EMS system.
Well,
what I was just backing up what you were saying is that is correctly. I mean, you were correct. I mean, that's.
If you're listening from Germany, let us know.
Well, and
they have ambulances that'll show up at grandma's house and make sure she's taking her meds, and they have like the pharmacy in the back and
that is my dream
refill
job
her prescriptions and shit like that. Yeah.
So
that is it. That's my dream job right there. I just want to be a handhold grandma every day of my life.
There is an agency just south of us that has been doing similar community paramedicine for 2 years through the pandemic. I recently just had a pacemaker check. So I went to my cardiologist testing office, and the one tech is a paramedic. And him and I, he knows that I'm a paramedic. We used to work at the same agency together eons ago. And, so him and I, get talking this last time. And he actually said that the local agency to where this doctor's office is, during COVID, the doctor's office pretty much shut down. So there were no, testing for people's pacemakers, defibrillators, like internal devices, nothing like that. So the hospital who controls this cardiologist's office, partnered with the ambulance squad to train on the testing equipment. So like mine is a Boston Scientific, to train on the Boston Scientific, device, take it to my house if I have an appointment, and the paramedic runs the diagnostic through the machine, does everything like blah, 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 just that like they would do in the office. And that's part of their community paramedicine program. They've been doing that for 2 fucking years.
That's great.
And
I mean, why aren't more people doing that?
Exactly. But I think there's so many ideas that people could see in front of them, but they just don't see it. It's because it's not visibly in front of them. They're like, huh, I didn't know people were doing that. I literally was watching a TikTok this morning, and one of these videos came up, and the girl was like, yeah, me and my husband, to pay our mortgage, we flip couches. And she showed like her whole system. She's like, yeah, I bought this. I got this couch on the side of the road for free. It took me about 3.5 hours to fix it up. Here's before and after. And then I sold it for $370. And I'm like, people do that? Like, I didn't even know that was a fucking thing.
Like, when you said flipping couches, I was like, somebody pays her to. I mean, I know there's fetishes for everything, but
I
like,
thought you meant
every
like
woman wants
furniture
to flip a couch.
rearrangement.
No, she fixes up couches that she finds on the side of the road or buys it, dirt cheap, and then she sells them for a profit.
I get it. It's like, that's not where, because I never heard of something like that. That's where my mind did not go to that as the thing. It was like, you're paying a woman to flip a couch. I mean, like, I don't know. Maybe it's like hot and hungry.
Right.
Or
The
something,
old lady that can't move the couch herself. She's calling and getting help.
But my point is, if you don't see it in front of you, you never realize these things exist. And right. I think that there's so many opportunities for EMS to do these things if the right administration and medical directors get together and go, hey, we got an idea. Let's partner up with XYZ and let's do this. And because the state doesn't care. There's no oversight that they're like, no, you can't do that. So
my question is who fits the bill, and how does the agency make money doing it?
I don't know. I honestly
don't know.
That's
my point, because Medicaid ain't going to give it to you.
Right. Yeah, I don't know.
All Medicaid knows is billable miles, and you're lucky if you get $1 out of them for it.
And it's an interesting thought, Gerard. I don't know if maybe they get a percentage back from the bill for the cardiologist's office. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, and that's the thing. I mean, there would have to be some way of obtaining compensation for it, because otherwise, like the point is no one's going to do anything if we're not going to make money doing it,
right?
Because at the end of the day, this is a business.
Absolutely. And I go back in 3 months, so I will make sure that I ask that question.
Definitely,
because now that is I want to know that, and I will get an update on that one. But so I'm going to switch gears here, because I want to quickly talk, and nothing that we ever do is quickly, but I want to try and talk about training. And, Gerard, you and I have done many EMT classes together. We've built scenarios that you and I love. And coming up to my next EMT class, again, I'm hoping that you and I can build some new type of scenarios for the students to go through that are drastically different from the ones that we've done previously. But where do you think training, or at least portions of training, because you always need to, do the cardiac arrest. You always need to know the asthmas and all the stuff that you're going to actually see that you need the muscle memory to do. But, should we be putting people through the crazy scenario, or do you think more of like a hand-holding situation where maybe it's like a lift assist, you go in, you lift them off the floor, and then they try and chat your ear off for 20 minutes kind of scenario, and just see how the providers acclimate to that kind of, environment?
Yeah, the one I love doing the most, and you know it. Shit, that's the you know
That
the one
is,
I'm talking about.
oh, absolutely.
Yeah, it's because I don't know how many prospective students we may have listening that you know, I don't want to give anything away, but I love the expressions on their faces because all they've done is, you know, respiratory, or they've done cardiac, or respiratory, or cardiac, and maybe a low blood sugar or something, you know what I mean? But it's usually like the trifecta. There's nothing more than that.
Right.
And then also they come in and, you know, I'm in the corner going, shit, you're freaking doing your thing over there. And they're just like, what the fuck did I just walk into?
Right.
You know?
And it's
and
not,
you know, I don't make it easy. I don't make it easy. You know, I'm belligerent and,
Oh, he does not make it easy.
you know,
I can vouch
so,
for that one.
but at
but
the
I mean,
same
and then all of a
point,
sudden now you can see the ones where, like, you know, you can see their gears start turning and stuff like that. And then the other ones are where their eyes just glaze over and they're like, oh, okay, I'm checking out.
right.
You know?
But at the same time,
But at the end, it's both of them are learning something that they never learned before coming into that.
right.
And that is, yeah, you're not just going to a cardiac, you're not just going to a respiratory, you're not just going to a diabetic.
Right.
You know, you're going to go to somebody that is not in your playbook.
Right.
And
No.
I think those, yeah, you have to train on the ones that we get the most, because those are the ones we get the most.
Right.
But yeah, I think having a scenario where it's just like, what the fuck is this?
Mm-hmm.
And I never really thought about it, but yeah, putting something together for, yeah, pretty much, you know, lonely old lady scenario number one, you know,
Yeah.
here you go. You're called for, you know, sick person,
Yep.
you know, and you show up and ain't a damn thing wrong. She just, you know, somewhere through your conversation, you learn, oh, her husband passed away last week.
Yep.
You know,
Yeah.
oh, this is why we're here.
And
She's alone in her house at night.
And what are you gonna do? You know, like
You know?
you can't. And once I read this article, I kind of thought, like, especially about like my MCI drill, right? Because we all know how absurd my MCI drill is, and you know, I was thinking of that, like, is that feeding into this kind of notion, and should I tone it to make it a little bit more realistic? But at the same point, then it got my brain just thinking, like, hey, you know, what about doing the altered mental status at the nursing home, right? We don't ever do those kind of where, you know, they have the Foley and they're on their, you know, they're sitting in bed and their eyes are closed and they don't want to talk to you, or this, that, the other thing. Or the little old lady who's just lonely and fell, or any of those like mundane, you know, you're literally just going to pick them up, transport them, and let's go, you know.
Or how about the one with the social dilemma?
Right.
Like we had the one lady, you know, where I used to work with you guys, you know, that I finally had enough that day. And, you know, we were there, 3 times a week, every week.
Yeah.
Because, you know, her spouse was unable to care for her anymore.
Mm-hmm.
And finally, you know, I think we were on scene for an hour, just making phone calls, trying to get through to somebody who could get some kind of social services over to get some help here, because this was not going to end well.
Yeah.
And yeah, I mean, a scenario like that where, hey, you've been, you know, called back to, you know, 123 Mockingbird Lane for the 3rd time, you know, this week.
Right.
And you know, here, what do you do?
Right. You know, I agree. I think there needs to be more exposure to those things. And even if you know, structure it as you still have all of your other stations, but you have one of these per week, you know, one of these per lab session.
Yeah, just something weird, something not necessarily weird, but just something that isn't respiratory, cardiac, or diabetic.
Right.
Or trauma.
You know, and they might not do a thing except for just be a human to another human. You know, and that's it. And then they're at least exposed to these things. So when they get to the field, it's not just, oh my God, I've never done this before. How do I just talk to somebody? You know?
Right.
Now, Kelsey, I want your perspective, because you're doing lab scenarios now and you're doing real life care now as a paramedic student. And you and I have had the conversation of, lab scenarios are not training you to see everything in the field. Can you kind of elaborate on those feelings that you've been having as a student?
Sorry, I couldn't unmute myself. Yeah, like, I feel like, I mean, I know that my program definitely does, like, its best, and I have went through some phenomenal scenarios, but then, like, you know, the first couple calls that we did in my ride time, I'm, like, searching for something to do. Like, itching to find a problem that I can fix, because every scenario in paramedic school leading up to is, you know, it's obviously going to go ALS. It's obviously something that needs, you know, can actually fix. But, like, sometimes we take in the patients that, you know, all they really need is a little bit of fluid, or you're really writing it in just because you kind of, like, you need to be there just in case. And, like, you know, you refer to them as ALS light calls, but, like, and I understand that you only have limited amount of time in lab, so, like, you know, why are you going to waste a 30-minute scenario on an ALS light call? But at the same time, then, you know, that's where your ride time comes in. And I think, like, that's why it's so important, is to do those calls where, you know, really all you're doing is kind of sitting back there. You're going to put them on the monitor and they're throwing PVCs, but really no complaints, nothing you can do about it.
Right.
But you still take it in because you put them on the monitor.
Right.
And it's those calls that, like, you know, I knew that, you know, there's ALS light calls in the world, and it wasn't like I went in and I was like, wow, like, I'm never going to do this. I'm only going to run the codes. But it was, like, almost harder to take that step back and be like, oh, there's nothing I can fix right now. Like, I do not need, I mean, we did one call that was BLS all day, and I don't even know how I managed to do it. I ALS the fuck out of that call.
You
like,
did.
Found every reason under the sun, and then thought about it after, and I was like, there was nothing that I actually needed to do.
Nope.
But I did it anyways, because you walk into paramedic school, and every patient that you walk into in that lab scenario is going to be ALS.
Yeah.
Right.
And, like, my hardest thing as a student was learning how to turn over patients' BLS, because I was like, I feel like I'm waiting for the other shoe to drop. Like, I know as a BLS provider that there are BLS patients, but in paramedic school, everybody's ALS.
Yeah.
And, like, I understand that, because why are you going to waste lab time, lab staff, lab resources on patients that are BLS? And I don't think necessarily you can change that, but I think there is a discussion to be had, you know, the minute that you go into your ride time and your field time, and it's like, okay, great. The biggest thing that you're going to learn out here, besides how to talk to a patient that's not your instructor pretending to be a patient, is going to be to differentiate when to sit on your hands when you actually need to do something. Because in lab, you know you're always going to be doing something. And the real world just isn't like that.
Yeah.
There are times where your decision is to do nothing.
And I think you and I had the conversation, and you touched base on it with one of our last patients that we had together, in that when you train to be a paramedic in paramedic lab, and when you train in EMT labs, everything comes to the point, right? So it's the triangle effect. You don't know what you're walking into, and there's a wide array of stuff that it could be, and that's the base of the triangle when you first start your scenario. But as you move towards the top of the triangle, you're throwing out all of your different differentials, and you find out that it was asthma, and only asthma, the whole entire time. And that's the tip of the pyramid. So you're narrowing down, and all lab scenarios are always, it's asthma, it's an MI, it's a cardiac arrest, it's one thing. And then you had a couple patients where it could have been like 3 things combined with one. And I remember the conversation of, like, they don't train us to think for more than one thing, because everything is linear. It's asthma, it's CHF.
I mean, like,
one thing.
I feel like we run the couple scenarios where, like, you know, we've done a couple where it's purely assessment techniques, and, you know, you've got a patient with the vaguest complaints in the world, and you know something is wrong, or they just had a syncopal episode, and, you know, they've got a million random little complaints, and none of the dots are actually connecting to anything. Or we've done ones where you're like, I'm not really sure what this could be, but that's maybe been 10 scenarios that I've ran all year.
Yeah.
And I feel like, you know, we've done the really bad one where they're having an MI and now they're in congestive heart failure because of it, and you know their pressure's too low and they're altered for CPAP, and you can't give nitro, and now everything just seems like the world is ending because they've got 7 issues at once. But again, those are only the handful of scenarios.
Right.
And I feel like, especially with the way people present, and I mean, it's hard to not confuse your students, but you do run into those patients where you're like, I'm not sure if they're in DKA, if they're septic, or if they just have a major head injury, and I just don't know where to go from here.
Right. Yeah, and again, I think if we transition some lab time to exposing people to these types of things, then maybe it wouldn't be so frightening or confusing when they actually get out and see it in the real world, because as Gerard loves to say, there's, happy fantasy land, and then there's the real world,
right.
And we have to train in the real world and not train in happy fantasy land. And I think we kind of train in both right now. A lot of programs do.
Welcome.
Hey.
Fucking dog.
We love Shadow. So yeah, guys, do you have anything else to add with this conversation?
Well, yeah. Until I was so rudely interrupted by the dog.
We still love it.
Was all right. But yeah, the other part about training that I would get into is, once you leave class, I mean, do we really train? We don't really do much actual training. Continuing training. We do CMEs, but you sit in front of a computer, you click some buttons, you get a little piece of paper to print out, and you're good to go.
Yep.
But I mean, one of the things I think, and again, it all comes back down to money, but one of the things that would make us a lot better at what we do is, if every 6 months we rotated through some form of, some kind of an academy or something where, you go through and you basically go back to paramedic school and you get put through the paces and given all the weird scenarios and, make you sweat and your butthole pucker and all that good stuff, for a week or so. And then, go back out. Okay. Now you've refreshed yourself on, surgical airways and doing all kinds of crazy shit that you're never going to fucking do.
Yep.
And even just the simple scenarios on how to not be a douche, have the freaking grandma scenario, things like that where, you just going back and doing, like in my former life, we used to call it recurrent training. And, every 6 months you had to go for recurrent training. And, in that profession, we had people's lives in our hands. Well, guess what? We have people's lives in our fucking hands in this profession. So why aren't we doing stuff like that? Why is it you finish school, you get your piece of paper, and you get your key code to your fucking, your online CME program, and off you go? When's the last time
it's all about money? It's always all about money, and it is simply amazing the difference between, say, like my wife's job as a flight nurse and ground EMS, where her company makes her go to quarterly skills training. So 4 times a year, she's got to drive 3 hours to the central location, location in the state, so that she can.
You can think yourself. Go ahead.
Okay. I was really hoping to go through the whole episode with no.
No. But central location was your bridge too far.
Yeah. Right. But, they go to this location and everybody goes through their test and they do a mock practical. Typically, it's like 4 stations. There's always a ped, there's always an OB, and there's always an adult, and there's always a cardiac arrest of some sort. So they have to do ACLS, they have to do PALS, they have to do OB, and then they have to do something. Right. And, there's always intubation, there's always IOs, there's always med pushes, there's always, the skills that they have to do all rolled into these very elaborate scenarios. And, she is expected to be proficient in all of those things. If she's not, It's just like a regular practical. They take you in to a separate area. They re-educate you. They let you retest. If you still fuck up, they take you off of flight status and they put you back on like as a third training. So my wife, being a 10-year veteran of the company, could sit there and go back on, OJT third status if she fucks up until she gets, the marks that says, hey, you're no longer a fuck up. You've learned, not learned your lesson. It's not, punishable or punitive. It's just re-education. They want you to not be a fuck up. They want you to know what you're doing and not screw up the tubes, say, So when
but if you also think about it, like what your wife does is, I mean, how many patients a year does she have where all she needs to do is some hand holding?
Right.
You don't really ever call a helicopter because grandma needs somebody to talk.
No.
And I'm not saying that, we don't ever do those skills, but she does those skills way more frequently and needs to have a higher acuity for it, where if we're going to do training, yes, we need to know those skills, but we also need to focus on basic people communication techniques because that's the majority of what we do.
100% agreed. Yes. And I would say that if we did I would love every half a year, do a skills evaluation and put everyone through practicals. I would love that. Right? Or, some form of skills evaluation and people evaluation. Like, hey, talking to the old lady who just wants to sit there and talk. Bring your kid in. I don't care. Have a conversation with a 4-year-old. I bet most people can't unless they're a parent. It's hard to have a conversation with a kid because what do you relate to a kid with if you're not a parent, right? And know how to relate that conversation.
Whatever they want to talk about. That is the easiest key to communication. Just sit there and let them run with it.
Yeah, but how many people do that, And that's, I think there is so much about education and training that we could talk about. It could fill up another episode. We're not going to do that right now, but I think we touched base on a whole lot of things in this episode that in coming full circle, I think everything comes down to the individual, you, me, everyone that listens to this show. It comes down to us changing the narrative first. If we start acting like pre-hospital providers and not paramagicians or paragods or, EMT badasses or all these fucking stupid labels, and we act as clinicians in the field and we run with the whole customer service aspect, I think we will change. And if people want to be part of a collective, they don't want to be, outside of the norm. So if we make being a, pre-hospital clinician and being professional the norm, more people are going to jump on that bandwagon because they don't want to be seen as the outsider to that. So that's just my 2 cents before we end.
Oh, I agree.
Till next time, guys, I guess we'll see you in May.
Yeah.
Woohoo.
Donuts.
Thank you for listening to today's episode. If you'd like more information on the podcast or to send us a call to review, visit medicmaterials.com/podcast. To learn more information, like us on Facebook at Medic Materials EDU, or watch our weekly instructional videos on the Medic Materials YouTube channel.